Spike Jones shot it, and I was doing a feeble grind on a flat bar in '89, I think it was. So the skateboarding thing was always, I was trying, and I was, trying to go. I was trying to go pro doing it, and then I started snowboarding at the same time, and just kind of shifted from skateboarding to snowboarding.
When I started snowboarding, I really thought it was gay. I mean, and gay in the true sense of the word. I was like, well, there's other people out there like me, these skateboarders and snowboarders. I was like, wow, this is cool. Maybe it's not as gay as I thought it was. And then you saw like the trendsetters. You saw all these guys, Gooch especially. You're just this little short guy with these huge jeans. And then the irony was, after a day of shredding, they'd get wet, and then the sun would go down, and you'd be riding them, and they'd turn into these big bells, these frozen bells, and your leg would just be like in this thing. It was the worst, coldest trend in snowboarding to date. But yeah, that era was just funny. But it was the whole attitude of the snowboarders back and skateboarders back then. It was like rebellious, and everybody made fun of you if you wore big jeans. You're like, yeah, that's right. Yeah. You don't understand, man. You don't understand what I'm doing with these jeans.
I met Gooch, just kind of signed up with Burton, and he was riding in big baggy jeans. He had a small bong in his pocket. He had super long hair. And he was from SoCal, and he loves his chips and salsa. And he introduced me to a few things.
Gooch kind of has this allure to him, this ninja Japanese, mystical Gooch, and there's a shot of him with it's all backlit, and there's just a huge pony coming off, the soul. I'm hardcore, I listen to punk rock music, I skateboard, but I'm also very soulful. He's just looking off into the distance like, you don't even know what I'm looking at right now. What I'm looking at is totally heavy, and you have no idea. Just freaking awesome.
I guess, yeah, once I got out of I did that semester at junior college, and once I got out, I moved up to Big Bear, and that was kind of the beginning of snowboard parks. That was the first time that Mountain had given full permission to just build jumps and build, these features, and no one really knew how. Well, we didn't really know at the time how big to build them or what really kind of features. So we started experimenting, and the technical aspect of it was just accelerating. It was we built this skate park where it was kind of bold corners and bank slalom runs and gaps and we put up rails and everything. And the riders around were just, it seemed like every day there was some new trick going on, or there was a really intense amount of progression happening in that park.
Bear Mountain was the only real snowboard park. They were building jumps, and Mike Perillo was digging his half pipe with a chainsaw, and it was pretty raw back then. And Brian was just definitely the innovator of the whole group there. He started doing those shifty backside 180s off these hips and stuff, and I remember just everybody trying to do shifty backside 180s like Brian Iguchi did. There's this one rainbow rail, it was pretty famous, and it was like a piece of a chairlift tower that was just laying in some scrap pile, and Perillo drug it out and stuck it in the snow. That was one of the first metal rails in a snowboard park, and Brian used to just kill all that stuff.
The word got out, and people from all over the place were coming down. There were people from the Northwest, and East Coast, and people from Europe, and this snowboard park just caught on and pretty much changed the way people were snowboarding. It really blew up, and it created the X Games, and it just kind of created this environment where snowboarding could really progress on a level where there was a lot of spectators and events and things. It seemed like a lot of things were happening at that time.
He would always do something amazing on the board, he was the guy who could do a lot out of little. He was just really into spinning and all the little jib things, He was a really good skateboarder, still is. So there's a lot of jib bonks and a lot of tail and nose maneuvers.
I guess one of his influential things too were just all the nose butter stuff. That was one of his deals, is spinning around from his tip to his tail and ollieing and bouncing around with one foot. That was all stuff that no one had really done?
It was probably 2 months after I moved to Big Bear. There was a big pipe contest at Snow Summit, and I was living in my Jeep and whatever, and I really wanted to do this contest. I got started riding a bunch and felt like, you know, maybe I could you know, go pro or whatever. You know, that's what I wanted to do. It was the first pro contest that I entered. And halfway down my first run, my binding broke. I didn't qualify for that. And I was so bummed. You know, wasted that money. I didn't know what I was thinking. You know, I was pissed. And next day I went out and I was just riding the pipe at Bear Mountain, and just doing my thing, just sessioning with a couple friends. You know, it was a nice day. And the pipe was good, so I was having a good session. And went, took a break to grab some water. And Tim Pogue was the team manager of Brick Snowboards, and he was there with some of the team, and had seen me ride during the contest, or in the practice for the contest, and that morning, and he approached me and gave me his business card and said, give me a call in 2 weeks, I'll be back in the office, and I'd love to help you out.
It's kind of crazy because like when I think about it, I don't think of him as really a progressive pipe rider for the time, but then when you start talking about it, he was one of the ones that was really pushing it at those times. The early, and I think it's in A Lively Ride, he does a Cat 9 in the pipe. And, you know, a bunch of switch stuff and a ton of spinning. Like, I think he was one of the first ones to really kind of take that up. And I think Hard, the Hungry, and the Homeless, like, I think he was doing some 900s.
But he was also, in the Lively Ride, he was doing alley-oop McTwist and tail grabs on this quarter pipe that could have been more than 6 feet wide and 10 feet tall. And it was really, really impressive to see. You know, I mean, here's a guy who was buttering, he was trying to help 1080s, 9s off of everything, and he was ruined on McTwist and stuff like that. It was sick.
You know, that's when he was filming like The Hard, the Hungry, and the Homeless, and then after that, Burton brought Brian in and helped him, and Brian helped Burton develop the Twin, which was that question mark Ouija Twin, you know, that was pretty famous.
I think it was early enough in snowboarding, there was big change happening. You know, it's kind of one of those things where, well, go travel with Mac Dog and go film, and then go to these contests. So we filmed between the contests and kind of just road trip. I just jumped in the car and we drove from event to event. But it was more of a filming, you know, we'd go out and film, hook up with locals at different places and go film stuff. And the project turned out to be The Hard, the Hungry, and the Homeless. That was the first snowboard film I worked on. You know, that was where my career kind of shifted to, was more the filming stuff. It was just kind of, that was, you know, gaining in popularity more than the events. The events were kind of, you know, I would say pretty well dominated by Terry, for one. And it was just more of a, I don't know, it just seemed like it was a better opportunity for me.
Gucci seemed like he just came out of nowhere, and it's interesting because all the other riders, you know, they kind of still had to do contests and stuff, with the exception of like Damien and those guys. But he was the first pure freestyler who actually just seemed like first he did movies, then he did contests.
I've never had the best luck with the contest. I was just, I ended up, you know, I ended up feeling frustrated about a contest. It's just one of those things. I don't think competition's easy. I remember Dave Sione came with me at the ASR show in San Diego, and he had said he had this concept for the snowboard movie. We're going to all jump in these Cadillacs and drive around, road trip around the States and make a snowboard movie. You know, I'm like, that sounds awesome. Who's going to go? He's like, well, I got Terry and Rankwit, John Cardiel. I was like, done, let's do this. We'd go shred all these spots, but then we'd go skate, you know, as much, if not more. And it was like on that trip, I remember, you know, skating Burnside with them, and with some mini ramps in Colorado, and just everywhere we went, there was like, you know, we hook up with the skaters, or we hook up with the snowboarders, or whatever. It was just it was a really cool time.
He basically took off with Dave Sione during, you know, the Roadkill filming sessions. He was gone for like a couple months, you know. I didn't even know what was going on until that movie came out, and then I was like, whoa, Brian was doing that. It's pretty sick.
And then you saw him in the Vulcan movies. The Live We Ride was the first Vulcan film I saw him in, and then obviously he had a lot of clips in The Garden.
You know, throughout the process of making it, we just kind of went out, okay, we're doing a Vulcan Snow Project. And Wooly, the owner, you know, he'd be out in the field with us in the backcountry hiking, you know, filming the Super 8 and Troy, Eckert. It kind of all came together in Sonora Pass in California. And that's what we came up with named The Garden. We would go up there, we'd camp, and we'd just hike these jumps, and we'd have these amazing sessions where it would be, you know, exhausting long days, you know, hiking around and just, you know, having a blast, and, you know, sitting around the campfire at night, telling stories and laughing and partying and just having a good time. And that's, you know, that's when we were like, this is the Butterfly Garden, this is the garden, you know. And then this is the movie. This movie's about this. This is what snowboarding is about, is hanging out with your friends, going out and finding, you know, these places that are special. You know, it was really kind of a liberating experience for all of us to be able to like get out from the ski resort and from the crowds and from the crazy park scene that was blowing up. I mean, making The Garden was probably still to this day the highlight of my snowboarding career. And it got me inspired to continue to search and explore and recreate that kind of feeling. Been trying to keep that dream alive by riding.